We are honored to showcase a passionate personality with more than 3 decades of teaching journey and working as a leadership, mathematics, and statistic facilitator. Her expertise lie in mathematics and education. She has considerable experience in co-constructing with schools professional development solutions that are soundly based on current research and evidence that supports the core principles of New Zealand curriculum. As a mathematics consultant, her role in schools is to support leaders to build and sustain professional learning communities that enable teachers to grow their capability. She is Bina Kachwalla representing New Zealand. Her session title is Visualizing Mathematics. How do we encourage children to see and talk about their mathematical thinking? Hello, Bina, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
And the stage is yours, Bina. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Anusha. Hello, everybody. I am going to start with my presentation, but before that, I would really like to thank the platform that has been given by Education Influence, Anusha and Gavin, and of course, all the team members and the participants and attendees. I think it's really a privilege to be on a platform like this, to be able to share ideas, experiences, and also enjoy the participation of others. It has been just amazing 2 days, and the third day today, I'm very sure it's going to be wonderful. So my presentation today is going to be looking at the experiences that I've had in New Zealand and the work that I do with various schools. So
I'm sorry, Bina, sorry to interrupt you. Is it possible to have a microphone near you because your voice is very low? I'm really sorry to interrupt you.
I can try. Let's see. Is it sounding better?
It is, but it's very low. Your sound is very low.
How can I make it bigger? I have no idea, darling. Can I say a little loudly now? Can you hear it?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, I'll try and speak up a little bit. Okay, so what I'm talking about is that we are going to look at the experiences that I've had in various schools. I would really like to thank all the schools who have given me the privilege to be with them, and they have taken on board all the lovely ideas presented with the researchers, and of course, the techniques that we are talking about, the collaboration with students and allowing students to talk amongst themselves. So we are looking at visualizing maths, and that is what is important. So 2 things over here that we are going to talk about is how do we encourage students to see or visualize their mathematical thinking, okay? And how do they talk to become better mathematicians? Rightio. So I'm thinking about that, how the things have changed in our lives. Just a simple thought about how the changes have happened as far as the telephones are concerned. I remember when I was a young child, we had the telephones where the numbers would go down and come back. And, it would take ages to dial 9 numbers or 6 numbers that we had at that particular time. But I remember having spoken with my colleagues and my friends and my sister, that how would it be wonderful if we can actually see the person we are talking to. And had we ever known that in our lifetime, we'll be able to see the person actually talking to us on the telephone, or even today in a webinar like this. It's just amazing. So how things have changed within so many years, and have we actually changed our education system? And I would say we are really looking at changing the systems and changing what Gavin has been doing, or what global influencers have been doing. Is just amazing work, that how we can change with times and how we can move and allow the kids to experience things, even if they're far away from us. Okay. So this is what we need to see, the bigger picture, that we want to move away from just these numbers without understanding the relationship. and giving the worksheets. Worksheets don't really enthuse children. They don't allow the kids to visualize. So what we need to think about is, how do we move from there to connecting mathematics with literature, or connecting mathematics with real life experiences, and allowing children to think about what they're doing. What I would do is just an example. It's the bear on wheels, the story. It's quite an interesting story. And Anusha has been reading so many stories all last a year, Anusha, and reading the
Yes.
story, allowing the kids to see the pictures, read the small, this is what I'm talking about for years, 5 years old, 6 years old, and they have come up with amazing understanding of what this problem can be. So after reading the problem, we can just think about taking these pictures or taking these characters into your story, because they can visualize what is happening now. So 9 bears were getting late for the circus. We've just talked about, okay, they would be on circus, and they realized they had only 2 unicycles now. They didn't have many unicycles, but just 2. Work with your partner to show how well do they travel on 2 unicycles. And the kids, I'm just showing what the kids did, and variety. They worked in pairs, and they talked about different ways that 9 can be decomposed. So 9 can be 5 and 4, and that's what would they realize. Or they would write 9 could be 2 and 7, and collecting these ideas, making them into table, and realizing how many different ways we can present 9. And that is where the mathematics, we're not looking at number 9 as just a numeral, but looking at number 9 in a variety of ways, which allow the kids to decompose numbers or split numbers to part-whole thinking, which is going to be a little further on. And what we're looking at right now is the ideas are taken from all these wonderful researchers. Bo Joler is talking about the mindset and the mathematical thinking. Susan Chapin is talking about classroom discussions. How do we have those discussions in a classroom so that the kids can think and we don't think for them? And Smith and Stein talking about the practices. Carol Dweck is talking about the growth mindset. And all these lovely research ideas, they can be put them together in the classroom. That is just wonderful. And that is the job that we have as facilitators. One of the quick readings that I have been doing right now is, I'll go back to that book, and that's called Thinking Classrooms. And Peter Lelgidal is talking about that he went to quite a few classrooms, maybe 40, 50 or 100 schools, and many, many teachers in the classrooms. And he realized that what the kids are doing, and they are not thinking, they are mimicking. So what is mimicking? Mimicking is giving what the teachers want, giving them the repetition of what the teachers have been doing. And unfortunately, our assessment systems are such that these kids, fortunately or unfortunately, but these kids go through it. They understand what they're doing because they're just mimicking, but they're not thinking on their own. What kind of changes are required? So what we are looking at is what change is required from mimicking, from traditional way of teaching, to going into developing thinking mathematical classrooms. So my question for you today is, to start with, is how do we encourage students to visualize their mathematical thinking? And I would like you to put your ideas on the chat, and let's have a little think about what are your thoughts regarding visualizing their mathematical thinking. How do you think the kids are visualizing today? Or how can we make them visualize? People, you can write on the chat so I can see that. Yeah, authentic task and daily examples, using stories and puppets, awesome. Giving simple day-to-day examples, yes. We can start real life situations, problems, connect with real life experiences, hands-on, awesome. And giving them experiences with variety of things, isn't it? Creative, allow them to critical thinkers, absolutely. using real life. Okay, so let's think about how can they visualize number. If you're looking at any number, how are they going to visualize that number? Can you think about how would they, what are the different ways they can visualize those numbers? What can they do by, using songs? Awesome. How else can they role play? One as a number, one son, yes. Talking about different components of and stories, using rhymes. Okay. Materials, awesome. All right, awesome. Okay, so we are looking at role play and rhymes and stories. That's awesome. Looking around, yes. Awesome. All right, people, I'm going to show you that what are the different ways the kids have been. So what happens in, the natural products are absolutely fantastic. So what are we, at present, what I'm showing is what are the equipments or material available in New Zealand schools, but you can have any material. You can have pebbles, or you can have sticks, or you can have leaves, or you can have variety of natural products as well that you can use as numbers. So visualize some of the ice block sticks that you could use to visualize are, and putting them in structures. One of the most important visualizations the kids can do is through their fingers. They can think about how they can count with their fingers, and they are important. This is visualizing numbers. They can visualize using or putting them in structures. A structured way of looking at is putting them in bundles, that how they can put the sticks into bundles of 10. It's easy to count the 10, 20, 30, 40, and then count the loose ones. Have you come across place value blocks? That's very nice as well. That's important. Or that is giving them the understanding of visualizing. Or you can use pebbles, you can use sticks, you can use so many other different things. And what we use generally in New Zealand is the tens frame. So this is a very interesting material that anybody can use. It's just a frame where there are 10 spaces, and the kids don't even have to think about it. They just put 10 pebbles on them, and that's 10. And that's how they can start putting them into groups of 10. And then we can go further with that and visualize those. So if you're looking at number 23, they can think about if they're using 10 frames, or they are looking at hands, or they are looking at place value blocks. They can think about 2 tens frame would make 20, and 3 loose ones would make 23. And that's visualizing the numbers. And then they can think about, if that is 23, how can I take 5 away from that 23? So take away 3 first, and they take away 2. How does it look like on a tens frame? They looked at 40, and then there are 8 more, so that makes it 48. And that is quite important for them to visualize rather than just number crunching. The second thought is, that is my presentation is all about, is how do we encourage students to talk about their thinking? So again, that's a question for you people. How are you going to encourage your students to talk about what their thinking is? So can you put them on the chat, please? Yeah, very nice. Modeling for number line is a great one too. Yeah. So how do they talk now? How will we encourage them to talk? By drawing and explaining what they're drawing, allowing explain what their thought process is. Awesome. Yeah, using pictures and real objects, visible thinking. Yeah, good. When they explain their thought, it is very important for the kids to think about how they are thinking and not the teacher's thinking. Partner discussion, yes, and drawing and pictures and talking to each other. Group discussions, that's awesome. Because the kids learn from each other definitely in a definitely better way than teaching with the Yeah, think, pair, and share, and provocation. Provocation is allowing and encouraging them. Yeah. Which digit makes 5 instead of asking 2 plus 3 is what? It's awesome. So you open-ended questions. That's amazing. That is what allows the kids to start thinking. Puzzles. That's awesome. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to show you some of the pictures that we see. These are the kids who are talking, and they are classifying that what are the different groups. They're groups of either they can classify by colors, or they can classify by where they go in there, and whether these are the vehicles that go in the water, or they go in the air, or they are on roads. So different ways of classifying. These are the kids, you're 5 and 6 years old. They're doing capacity, finding out how many cups can be held in, or that container can hold. The kids are working together to find out their measurements of the body measurements, classification again, and talking about different things. Again, encouraging maths talk is allowing the kids to have a discussion that I notice about Bina, that she's done that, or I agree with Bina because allowing these sentence structures or sentence starters, allowing them to use this language that this makes sense, or I disagree with, or I can add my own idea to that idea of somebody else. Okay. Positive teacher talk is so important, that rather than talking about the work, that well done for the answers, we are looking at how wonderful you are. I mean, I'm proud of the risks that you've taken today, or I noticed that you have tried a variety of strategies to solve your problems. So these are beautiful positive teacher talk, which encourage students to talk. So valuing your students in the classroom is the way to go, in the sense that if they feel that they are valued, or I can take a risk, or I can take a mistake, I can make a mistake, and the teacher is going to be pretty okay, then the student feels that the platform or the classroom is safe enough for them to talk further. Another way of introducing a problem is by narrative, as you said, by storytelling. So this is a story about buttons and bears, and they have to really find out what the idea is all about here. So in this story, we are looking at either we can talk about Goldilocks and bears, and then take that story a little further and say, okay, now the mama bear doesn't have one child, but one baby bear, but has 5 baby bears. And they are going on a walk. It's a winter. It's really very cold. And before going for the walk, mama bear wants to make sure that they have jackets to wear, or something warm to wear for themselves. And so mama bear is making new coats. Now I'm going to show you 2 different questions here. And in this particular question, the teacher has said each coat has 2 buttons on them. The kids are doing the problem. They would enjoy doing the problem. But if you can make this problem open-ended, or in the sense that the kids have to think about something more, and one of my teachers have created that problem. And this is what the problem is: change. That mother bear is now making a new warm coat for 5 bears, okay? Each coat has the same number of buttons on them. Work with your math buddy to find out how many buttons does mother bear need. So they have to work with a partner to figure out what are they going to do. They have to unpack the problem. Of course, the teacher helps them to unpack the problem. But at the same time, they have to negotiate on a lot of things. They have to talk about how many buttons do you think we need to. So how will your students solve this problem? I want you to have a little think about it, that and what are the kids learning by solving it together? And how are they going to count these buttons? So think about a group of students, or 2 students in your classroom, that how are they going to solve this problem? What are they going to negotiate with each other? And you can put it on the chat. That's awesome. Best conversations happen when they explain to their peers. That's awesome, Neelam. Fix the numbers, okay, of buttons on each coat. They will look at their own shirts as a reference. That's awesome. And then the number on each coat, okay. How important it is for them to understand what each means. That each button, each coat has the same number of buttons. And that's also allowing them to think multiplicatively. How are they going to solve the problem? How are they going to count these buttons? Yeah, how many buttons would the mama bear have? Count the bears and number of each coats and buttons, yes. How many buttons to put on each bear, and that's what they're going to negotiate about. So they are learning. They're learning to listen to others. They're learning to negotiate their ideas. They're learning to work with each other. They're learning to count the problem with each other. Are the size of the buttons same? Yeah. Okay. That's another question that they can ask, whether they want to choose the buttons. If you have buttons in front of them, whether they want to choose the buttons without the same size, or they can have buttons with different sizes. Yeah. Awesome. So I'm going to share what the kids in the school has done. Okay. This is year. So they are 6 and 7 year old kids. And so this group decided to put 4 buttons, and they are negotiating, and they're putting on the bears 4 buttons, and they're counting in a different ways. They started with counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because I was present over there. The teacher was taking the lesson and I was present. It's wonderful to see how these kids can think about. And once they started counting, the other child said, oh, we can count in 2s as well. So they started counting 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It was just amazing to see how the discussions were taking place. How are they learning from each other? In the same classroom, this group decided to have 5 buttons on each bear. So they were counting on 5s, and they were thinking 5 for them was pretty easy to count because they had done enough of counting in 5. So they could do 5, 10, 15. They could skip count easily. And these ones, I think they did 3. This particular group did 3 buttons on the bears. So the discussion in this particular classroom was so amazing. And they said that, okay, those who did the 5 buttons, and they said that Mother Bear had to have 25 buttons. And the other group said we had 20 buttons. Mother Bear had to have only 20 buttons. And the other group said my Mother Bear had to have only 15 buttons. And they were wondering, there was one girl who asked a question that why some kid, Mama Bear had to have 25 buttons and others had to have only 15 buttons, 15 or 20 buttons. And the discussion happened that why 25 and why 20 and why 15. That also did develop that relationship with numbers, that why are these numbers smaller or why are these numbers bigger? And they came out with the solution. The teacher was just asking questions. What do you think? Or why do you think that could be? And they looked at their bears again, then said, oh, my bears have more buttons on each coat and your bears have less buttons on each coat. That gave them the relationship, that gave them the comparison, that why would one group of our bears would have more buttons than the other groups of bears. And then they started talking about 25. We had 25 because we have 5 buttons on each bear or each coat. And the others were saying we had only 4 buttons. And that's why we had less buttons on the total numbers. And they started looking at how do we present this on the number line. And if I can, yeah. So the first group who did with 3, They said we have 1 button, 1, and they jumped 3 buttons, 1 bear, another 3 buttons, another 3 buttons, another 3 buttons, and my 5th bear. So we had 15 bears altogether. I mean, we 15 buttons. The other groups looked at 4. Think about how is the visualization is helping these kids to think about which number is bigger and why. Why is 20 bigger and how does it look bigger than 15? How many more buttons are there than 15? And the last one also talked about, so this was jumps. They had already done, they do jumps, they do frog jumps, and they do lots of jumps and counting. And they could realize that how do I jump in 5s to show each bear? And they talked about 25. This was an amazing lesson for that day, for the teacher as well, because the kids had a lot of discussion about how is 15 less than 20? Because though I had 5 jumps, we jumped only in 3s, whereas those who have 25 buttons, they jumped in 5s. And that is skip counting. They developed skip counting. They developed the understanding of relationships between numbers. They also developed the understanding of if there are less number of buttons on each coat, the total is going to be less. People, if you have any questions, please write that, or you can unmute yourself and talk about it. The whole idea about the teacher taking a step back as a facilitator and allowing the students to discuss is developing the equity, or more than that is the justice given to them in the classroom. So we are actually looking at the barriers gone. So the barrier is gone and all the kids can participate and work with each other, because we want to reduce this inequality in the classroom. We do not want a child, because they are all mathematicians. If we believe, so it's our belief is so important, that if we believe that everyone in my class can learn mathematics, or we are teaching mathematicians, then the students are valued, because they are talking about what they know at this point, and they can learn from each other. So we have a flow of communication. How do we want our flow of communication in the classroom? I remember when I was in the school, because they were, I mean, these ideas were not as important at that particular time. We had unidirectional. That means that teacher talking, the students are listening, and there was more of mimicking, as we think about. The teacher modeled, teacher did whatever they did in the classroom, and we actually did what the teachers wanted us to do. So that was unidirectional, and of course mimicking. Bidirectional is quite, I've seen that happening in quite a lot of classroom. The student talking to teacher and the teacher talking to students, and there's a good talk happening. What we are looking now is multi-directional. The teacher is part of the whole group, and the students are talking among themselves, and the teacher is part of that discussion. And there's no one directing or one telling the other. So everyone is learning from each other. And that is a new way of looking at how do we improve the pedagogy, where kids are valued, the kids feel that they are mathematicians, and the kids can solve problems by agreeing, learning from each other. These are some of the questions that we ask, or dialogue starters, that do you agree, do you disagree? That I already discussed that, but I stress on that, because these are the questions that allow the kids to go beyond their thinking. That why would you agree with them, or why is her strategy or Bina's strategy or David's strategy different than your strategy? Do you have the same answer, but they are thinking in different ways? And how does that make it different or the same? This is quite interesting. Looking at estimation, that how often do we allow the kids to estimate in the classrooms? So think about, where do you estimate? Where do we estimate in our real life? Do we actually use math all the time, or do we I mean, not the real accuracy of mathematics, but we look at how do we estimate? Sorry, thank you, everyone. Please wait for presenter, call your name or register your queries in the chat box. Sorry, Anusha, am I missing something?
That's okay, Vina. I'm just that's okay. Please continue.
All right. Okay. So we are looking at encouraging students to estimate and thinking about, yes, cooking. We estimate all the time. We really do not look at the accuracy of things. So if I want to buy a house today, I'm looking at what is my budget? We are not looking at the exact number. We are looking at, can I buy a house of $800,000 or $1 million, or what is the capacity that I have? Like my son was wanting to buy his house, and the houses that he went to look at, what the house prices of houses are just skyrocketing today. And he said, Mom, I can't buy that because it's about $800,000. I don't even have that much money. So how do we, this estimation is so important by grouping students for activities. Yep, estimating. So kids need to learn to estimate the number. So when I showed you the first pile of those ice block sticks, and if I would ask the kids, what is that? Or how many do you think there are? If the kids would think about, oh, there are 1,000 ice block sticks, or they would think about there are 10 ice block sticks, then you can think about that their estimation is really poor. But if they come across, oh, it could be 45, or it could be 53, or it could be 59, or it could be 60, then you know the estimation leads to visualization. That's awesome. Yeah. So we are going to actually estimate together. So once I ask you the question, I don't want you to write the answer straight away. When I say, okay, put your answers on the chat box, then you can all do together. So this is what is called multiple beats. It's just beautiful. And I will send the link. It's by Steve Viburney. If you just go Google that, and you will come across this particular one. And I would like you to use that. It's just amazing. So what happens over here is that you are given, it's a visual one, and you're given, okay, there are beads there, and you got to just think about how many beads are there in that glass. I don't want you to write the answers right now. When I tell you, I want everyone to think about what my estimation is, and you can put it on the chat, okay? So what's going to happen in here is that you got to guess how many, or estimate how many beads there are, and the clues are going to appear. So every clue, you might want to change your estimation, or you can keep it going if you think it's no, you're estimating still the same. And as we go further, you can keep on changing your estimation. And that experience is very important for the kid. That if the kid thought about, okay, it could be about 1,000 beads, and then you think about, okay, look at the first clue. Does it match? No, I need to change mine. And then they keep changing and come closer and closer to the real number. And that is important. So we need to develop that skill in kids, that how do you estimate, okay? So I want you to think about, so you write down your first estimate. So I want you to do it now. 1, 2, 3, everyone can put their estimation now. Okay, somebody's saying 37, 32, 30, okay. 25, okay. 40, awesome, 28, 50. People, you have all the chance or time to change your estimation. And I think it's quite important that people allow those kids to change their thinking as well. Okay. Everyone's finished, then we can go further. Everyone. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you, Anusha. So we'll just finish this, and then we'll have the question answer sessions. Okay, so here we go. So we have clue 1, and okay. So there are numbers given to the kids, and they have to think about. The answer is 2-digit number, and that is multiple of 3. Important thing for the kids to think about, what are the multiples of 3? How do they look on the hundreds chart? Okay, so they would think about that the answer is 2-digit number, it's multiple of 3. Give them the time to think about what that number could be. Okay, so these are the numbers, and look at the pattern on hundreds board, that how beautifully the numbers are patterned, the 3, 12, 21, and how can the visualization is. And if you keep you can keep changing your ideas. That's great. The answer is an odd number. So if that is a clue, what numbers are going to disappear? And the kids, so elimination is another important way of looking at the clues, okay, or looking at guesses. The answer is not multiple of 9. So which are the numbers which are going to disappear because of that? Okay. People, you have chance to change your number now. Okay, if you are already changing it, that's great. The answer is not 3 more than 72. So which are the 2 numbers that are going to disappear now? And the last one, people. All right. So it could be one of these numbers. And the last clue is the answer does not include the number 1 and 3. So what are the numbers that are going to remain is 57 and 87. I want you to write your last clue. That what do you think is the answer now? Okay, people are changing it to 57. That's awesome. And let's see what the answer is. The reveal and click the answer would be 57 people. Those who thought about 57 is making, yeah. Okay, very, very interesting activity for the kids to do and estimate. People, we also are not in a habit of estimating as much. And that's the reason why these kind of activities are very important. So visualization, allowing the kids to talk, is the key for learning. Okay, it's time for questions. Anusha?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bina. Thank you for introducing us to activities that engages children to visualize mathematical acts. I mean, visual number talks to encourage students to think critically about the relationships between the patterns and the numbers to make the concept understood. Thank you so much for your inspiring session. And I would like to request everyone to register your queries in the chat box if you have any questions for Bina. Ladies and gentlemen, you have 20 minutes. Please do unmute yourself. If you do have any questions, please wait for your turn, or you may register your queries in the chat box. So we have Sobita Jory are questioning you. How do we visualize probability?
Okay, so I'll tell you one of the examples that happened in my classroom. These are 5-year-old. Now, depends on what age group are you looking at, but this is, I'm talking about just the year 1 student. And we were looking at, I went and attended the class, and the teachers were looking at the words like certain or probably this might happen, or this might happen, this may not happen. And they were just looking at the words and understanding what is probability, what are the chances that that can happen. And the question the teacher asked after that discussion was that, okay, I'm asking you a question that tomorrow I am going to be, or that is you, your students, are going to be taller than the house. What word would you use? And most of the kids said, impossible, you can't be taller than the house. But one child said, it is possible. And it was quite amazing to think about that. What is the answer this child going to say? Or what is she going? So everyone turned around and say, are you sure? You know, these are the young kids who are asking. So can you tell us, how do you think that? And the child said that I can make a Lego house and I can be taller than my Lego house that I make. That is visualization and probability. So whatever age level, there are so many things that they can think about, visualize, they play, and find out what the chance is all about. Does it make sense? Whoever asked, Shobita? You can talk.
Thank you. He says yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bina. And we have Supriya Menon asking, how do you introduce symbols of numbers?
You mean to send the numerals 1, 2, 3? Supriya?
Hi, Supriya. Is it
Yeah,
possible?
sorry, yeah, can you hear me? So yes, the
Yes, we
numbers,
can
the
hear you.
numerals, yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, numbers are conventions in the sense that we have to just accept the numbers that are there. But with that number, we associate the objects. So if I want to introduce number 1, then the kids would think about, okay, what is 1? Talk about 1 with finger and do the numeral. But at the same time, I would make a big chart and I would say, what is 1 that you would like to put it over there? If the child puts 1 ball, 1 tree, 1 finger, or 1 dot, I would like them to think about when they make number 2, that number needs to grow. So what I do with my kids is that I would give them similar objects in the sense that they would have ball, they would have tree, they would have dots or dot cards, or they would have fingers showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and things like that. And the kids would make a chart with 1 with all those objects. When they're making number 2, the same objects on this other chart. That means ball in 1 would become 2 balls in the other one. That means they understand that the same object is growing or getting bigger. 1 and then 2, they can see that there's 1 extra finger over there. So that is how the numbers are increasing. But at the same time, when you put it the numbers over there, they need to see the relationship with numbers. So if I have 1 or 3 and 2, I would have the blocks or pebbles or whatever, and they need to see what is the similarity, what is the difference between those 2 numbers. Why is 1 bigger? Why is 1 more? 1 is less? They would talk about it, that 1 is more, they have 3 is bigger than 2. And why? And how much bigger than 1? Or how much bigger than 3 or 2? That the relationship number by there's just a numeral doesn't tell you how many there are. They have to visualize it with either dots or by objects.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bina. We have 15 more minutes for the Q&A session. We have Annalise
Thank you so much.
Nyakato.
Okay, what is the next one?
Hi, Anne. How are
Yes,
you?
please. Hi. Thank you, Bina, for the presentation. So I'm Nyakato Annalise from Uganda, and I work with an organization called Teach for Uganda. Now, my classroom has got 100 children in the class, one classroom. How best can I arrange them to do the activities minus them, like, okay, me having class control? Thank you.
This is tricky. This is really, and you are the only one teacher there? It's one teacher.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, but first of all, I know it'll be harder than what I would be doing here with just 35 kids in my classroom. That's definitely different. But the classroom norms, and I have done it in India with 75 kids in the classroom, so I can share similar ideas. But I'm also looking at what is a classroom climate that we need to set up. The first important thing is classroom climate. We need to have the classroom climate where kids are able to listen and understand each other's idea. I would put them in groups of 5s or, and then only take half class, give independent activity to another half. So I'll have 50 kids where I would be roving around and talking to them about. But it is not as easy. Okay, I can tell you that it's not as easy as I would have just 35 kids. So there would be difficulty in doing that, and you may not even have the equipment for so many kids, so they can draw. Okay, they can draw and talk about their ideas. If the classroom climate is good in the sense people are able to listen to others' opinions or respect others' opinions and wait their turn, then it might be still possible.
Thank you so much, Bina. Thank you so much. We have 13 more minutes, and Dr. Pratima Khandelwal questions. Excellent session. Thanks, Bina. Can you please share your thoughts on activity-based learning in mathematics for higher grades, say 11th and 12th standards?
Awesome. Activity-based for all areas, I would say. That even if I'm looking at 11th and 12th standard, we would have activity. In a way that if you would have looked at the, if you have a project, I can just share some of the ideas that I looked at up school and looked at what projects these kids are doing. So for those kids, I would have a bigger project, and I would have things like that they have to create certain things to help somebody else, maybe a program, or they would have events in which all these aspects of learning would happen, and maths can be a practical way of looking at it. That's one aspect. But there are other things like when you talk about algebraic thinking requires a lot of maybe visual ideas, and they can create their own generalization. So we in New Zealand, the schools that I go to, we do have the patterns in algebra where they can think about why are these patterns growing and how are they growing? How can you visualize these patterns growing? If you go into YouTube by Jo Bowler, she is looking at year 11th and 12th, that age group as well. And she has created some wonderful visuals for the kids to look at and solve problem and make their own generalizations. So that'll be really interesting to go through.
Thank you so much, Bina. We have 12 more minutes. And Mozaim, who sent questions, thanks for a fantastic presentation. There is difficulty remembering math facts, rules, formulas, sequences, and procedures. Is there any easy instructional strategy for this? Great to hear if there is anything for big classroom.
Again, big classroom. Now, big classroom is a little difficult thinking, but think about the first lesson that I did. I just showed you how the kids are doing about 9 bears. Okay, so the basic fact about year 5, year 6 years old would be knowing how to decompose the numbers up to 1 to 10. Okay, so they think about how do you make 9. 9 can be 4 and 5, or 9 can be 2 and 7. So in that one particular lesson that the teacher did, so the kids did the bears and they put 4 and 5 and they put 2 and 7. And then after the lesson, there would be a few minutes where the kids would say, teachers would say, okay, I'm doing orchestrating. So I'm going to say a number and you are going to make 9 with the other number. So the teacher would say 4 and they would say 5, 2, 7, 7, 2. And that is one of the ways, but they have to understand what that basic fact is all about. They cannot memorize without knowing or visualizing. So even if it's multiplication, they should be able to visualize. If it is 4 times 5, they should know that it's 4 groups of 5. So what is 4 groups of 5? What? There are 4 groups of 5 apples in each. Or 4, they need to visualize that first. And then it becomes, then of course, I would say drilling and rote learning is important, but they should be able to visualize any mathematical basic facts or generalizations before they memorize them.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bina. We have Meetup Paul questioning, children get confused when I introduce 1s and 10s because we usually count from left to right. And for place value, they need to count from right to left. How to correct this?
Good thinking. I mean, the confusion is pretty good. I like when the kids are confused because we need to wobble their minds to think about and then ask them, why do I write this way or why do I write that way? How do I introduce 1s and 10s because we usually count from left to right. What does it mean by when you count from left to right? Can you explain that to me, Mita? So
hi, Mita. Is it possible for you to unmute yourself? If not, please use the chat box.
What is Mita saying?
I don't think she's online, Bina.
All right. Okay, go to the next question then.
Sure. So now, moving on, we have 9 minutes left, ladies and gentlemen. And we have one more point from Dr. Pratima Khandelwal. How to introduce differential challenging questions in the class at the same time. This is in context of handling intellectual diversity in the class.
Awesome. And that is where I'm looking at, Pratima, I'm looking at generally the primary class where we can have more discussions happening, because as we go for the older kids, it gets more and more generalization. So they have generally to look into books and solve the problems with not much of dialogues happening. But for the juniors, when you talk about say when year 9 and year 10 standard, we are looking at low flow, high ceiling problems. And low flow, high ceiling means that when the problem is such that everyone can participate, everyone can do something and participate. And then what happens in my classroom is that we develop a group of kids where one child is almost at the basic level, another one is at a little high level, and the other one is at a high level. And they put them in groups of 3 or 4, and they share their strategies. But it might take a little longer to establish this collaboration or learning culture in the classroom. But once they are set up to do those things, they learn and they have their own inquiries and they learn with themselves. But the bridging of the gap, because intellectually, or age-wise, all the kids are of the same level, and we treat them because we feel that, oh, he's not able to do that. But he is not given the privilege of listening to somebody who may be, say, talking about higher strategies. And more they listen, they start thinking in those ways. So it might take a little longer, but they will get there. And some of the parents might come and ask you that my kids are at a high level, why have they to explain these things to the people who are not able to understand? But very important aspect of any mathematician is how clear are they in their thinking. I have had lots of kids who are very procedural and they can give me answer in 3 minutes. But if I say I give you a simple example. It was 13 chocolate bars divided by 8. So there were 8 students, and the kids say, oh, 1 5/8. And I said, okay, if that is the answer, can I have my share of chocolate bars? There are chocolate bars over there. There were paper chocolate bars over there. And they said, I can give you 1 whole, but we don't know what 5/8 look like. And these are 6th standard or 7th standard kids. So they are procedural, but they can't visualize. And after the lesson, because we put them in groups and they learned and they talked, they saw, and they realized that that was the best fraction lesson that they ever understood, the fractions, because they actually could visualize. So I think it's very important to allow that collaborate learning happening, and then you can see.
Thank you so much.
Great, Bina. If I can say just something, you so beautifully exemplified for the lower classes, and I'm sure this is worthy to apply. I was just, this context was of higher education or higher classes,
Yes.
where we have a lot of diversity through different entrance exams they enter. I'm sure you have the Indian flavor as well.
Yes.
So we have limitations of time as well. And on top of it, there are some who are absolutely, you write the equation on the board and it is done. And we have, I myself don't like to use the word slow learners, but yes, we have challenged students who take much longer to solve that. And the other ones, the bright ones, are feeling bored when we are giving them others time. So I just thought of sharing one idea. I take some extra questions in the class, and where I keep giving those hungry minds higher order questions, while the other ones are solving the previous questions only. How would you rectify this?
Yeah, I would rectify it only when the kids, I mean, you don't become the teacher, but the kids become teachers. So putting them in groups of 3 or 4, and those who are fast learners can try and help the others and see whether they can do that, because that would be a fantastic way of allowing the kids to learn. And you would realize that the kids, by learning from the older, by the same peer group, is much faster than what the teacher can do. Because with the teacher, they are just going to mimic. They won't ask a lot of questions. But with the colleagues, they keep on asking, I can't understand why this is happening. Why are you putting 3 over here? Why are you multiplying 3x? And why? Where is this y coming from? So all those kind of questions, which they won't ask a teacher, they easily can ask a colleague, and the students. So maybe that might help.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It has to be a classroom culture for years. I mean, it's not only one day's.
I know it takes time. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Dr. Pratima. Thank you, Bina. And ladies and gentlemen, we will be showcasing Bina's recording on our platform, educationinfluence.com. But if you have any queries, please refer back to the Google form link, which I've shared in the chat box. And we have 3 minutes left, Bina. So one more question for you, and we have 3 minutes left. Okay. From Teresa Boki, she said, the way of children counting with their fingers, some open finger to start count 1 to 10, and some students start count closed fingers. Is that okay to use both for students in early years? You have 3 minutes.
Absolutely, the way the kids can learn it. And I remember that some of the kids do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what I learned in India was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I could count up to 15 in my fingers. Whereas those kids who count fingers, they count only 5. So thinking about how many different ways the kids learn, and that's fine. And they can share with each other and talk about how am I counting, and the others can also take it away, learn from each other.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bina, for your amazing engagement session. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone. It was just amazing to have you people around.
Thank you.
Thank you.